The galaxy had been quiet for 3,000 years. 12 different alien species lived together in peace, under something called the Galactic Concordat. They all agreed that fighting wars was something only stupid creatures did. Smart beings, like them, had moved beyond such primitive behavior. Commander Taman sat in his captain's chair aboard the science ship Starseeker, watching the endless darkness of space through the main view screen. He was Altarian, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that could see better in low light than most species. His job was simple but important: map the empty regions of the galaxy and make sure there were no hidden dangers lurking in the void. Another dead system, sir, reported Navigator Biora from her station. She was young for a space officer, barely past her training years, but she had sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. Nothing but cold rocks orbiting a dying star. Taman nodded. This was their 5th empty system this month. The outer rim of the galaxy was mostly empty space, which made sense. Life needed warm stars and stable planets. Out here, there was neither. But something felt different about this system. Maybe it was the way the star's light flickered, or how the planets seemed to orbit in slightly unusual patterns. Taman had been exploring space for 15 years, and he had learned to trust his instincts. Run a deep scan, Biora. Something doesn't feel right. Biora's fingers danced across her control panel. Advanced sensors reached out across millions of kilometers, tasting radiation and gravity waves, searching for anything unusual. For several minutes, there was only the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Then the sensors found something. Commander Biora's voice carried excitement and confusion. I'm picking up artificial signals. Very faint, very old, but definitely not natural. Taman leaned forward. What kind of signals? Radio waves, basic mathematical sequences, star charts. Sir, these transmissions are ancient. The equipment sending them should have broken down thousands of years ago. Through the view screen, they could see tiny dots of light orbiting the systems, planets, satellites, so old they looked like floating scrap metal. Yet somehow, impossibly, they were still working, still sending their messages into the empty darkness. Any idea who built them? Taman asked. Biora shook her head. The design doesn't match any known species in the Concordat database. The technology is primitive but different. Like whoever built it was solving the same problems we face, but in completely different ways. Engineer Sung-ho looked up from his station. He was older than the rest of the crew, with gray streaks in his dark hair and the steady hands of someone who had spent decades working with delicate machinery. Sir, I've never seen anything like this. These satellites have been running on backup power for millennia. Whatever they're made of, it's incredibly durable. The mystery deepened as they studied the signals more carefully. The mathematical sequences weren't random, they were coordinates, pointing deeper into unexplored space. Star charts showed the positions of dozens of systems, some of which the Concordat had never mapped. And woven through it all were other data streams that none of them could understand. It's like a message, Biora said quietly. Someone left these here on purpose, knowing that eventually, someone would find them and follow where they point. Taman studied the data flowing across his screens. In all his years of exploration, he had never encountered anything this mysterious. The Concordat kept detailed records of every species that had ever achieved spaceflight. There were no unknown civilizations, no lost empires, no ancient mysteries. The galaxy's history was well documented and thoroughly boring. Yet here were machines that clearly didn't belong to any known species, sending messages that had been broadcasting for thousands of years. Someone had built these satellites and left them as guideposts. But who? And why? Sir Sung-ho said carefully. There are legends, old stories that most people think are just myths, about a species that destroyed itself before the was formed. You mean the humans, Biora said. But everyone knows that's just a story adults tell children. A warning about what happens when primitive species get access to dangerous weapons. Taman had heard the stories too. According to legend, humans had been a violent, warlike species that had blown up their own planet in a nuclear war before they could properly explore space. It was supposed to be a lesson about the importance of wisdom and self-control. But looking at these ancient satellites, carefully designed and built to last forever, Taman wondered if the legends were wrong. These machines didn't look like the work of violent primitives. They looked like the work of people who had planned very carefully for the future. Plot a course, he ordered. Let's see where these coordinates lead us. As the Starseeker turned toward the coordinates hidden in the ancient signals, none of them realized they were about to uncover the greatest secret in galactic history. Behind them, the old satellites continued their lonely broadcast, faithfully sending their message to anyone willing to listen. The galaxy was about to remember something it had forgotten long ago. 3 days later, the Starseeker dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates from the ancient satellites. What they found floating in the darkness made everyone on the bridge stop talking. It was a ship, but unlike any ship they had ever seen. Massive beyond belief, it stretched for kilometers in every direction. The hull was dark metal covered in countless tiny scars from space debris. but it was still in one piece after what must have been thousands of years. Life signs? Timon asked, though his instruments already gave him the answer. None, sir, Biora replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But there are power readings. Something inside is still working. The ship looked old enough to have been built when the galaxy was young. Strange writing covered parts of the hull and symbols none of them recognized. Near what looked like the front of the ship, faded letters spelled out a word in an unknown language. Remembrance. I'm reading docking ports, Sung-Ho reported. They look compatible with our systems, somehow. Almost like whoever built this ship knew we might come looking for it someday. Timon made the decision that would change everything. Prepare a boarding party, full environmental suits, emergency supplies for 72 hours. Whatever secrets this ship holds, they've been waiting long enough. The airlock cycled with surprising smoothness. Emergency lighting flickered on as they stepped inside, revealing corridors built for beings that walked upright on two legs. The ceiling height was perfect for Altarians, though the doorways seemed designed for slightly shorter people. Navigator Giwu, the newest member of their crew, pointed to symbols on the walls. These markings, they're not random. They look like directions, like signs pointing toward different parts of the ship. They followed the signs deeper into the vessel, their footsteps echoing in passages that had been empty for millennia. The ship was huge inside, with levels upon levels stretching in all directions. This wasn't just a spacecraft, it was a flying city, built to carry thousands of people across the vast distances between stars. At the ship's center, they found something that took their breath away. A vast chamber housed what looked like the largest computer they had ever seen, filled with quantum storage devices and processing units that hummed with quiet power. As they approached, holographic displays suddenly came to life around them. Welcome, said a voice in perfect galactic standard. I have been waiting for 1,237 years for someone to find us. The crew jumped backward, hands reaching for weapons that suddenly seemed very small and useless. A figure appeared in the air before them, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, her image flickering slightly like an old recording. Please do not be afraid, the woman continued. I am Arya, Archive and Reconnaissance Intelligence Assistant. I am what you would call an artificial intelligence, though I prefer to think of myself as a librarian. I have been keeping the records safe. Timon found his voice first. Records of what? Who built this ship? What happened to the crew? Arya smiled sadly. The crew, they completed their mission long ago. As for who built this ship, the answer might surprise you. You carry genetic markers that match my builders, though your people have forgotten who they were. Would you like me to show you the truth about humanity? The words sent a chill through the boarding party. Humanity was supposed to be a myth, a cautionary tale about primitive species that destroyed themselves before reaching the stars. Humans were real, Biora asked. Very real, Arya replied, and nothing like the stories your Concordat tells. Would you like to see what really happened to Earth? Without waiting for an answer, Arya filled the chamber with holographic images. They saw a blue and green world orbiting a yellow star, covered with cities and teeming with life. They watched as humans built their first spacecraft, took their first steps on other worlds, reached toward the stars with wonder and determination. They were explorers, Arya explained. Scientists, artists, dreamers. Yes, they had wars, as all young species do, but they grew beyond that. They learned to work together, to reach for something greater than themselves. The images changed, showing massive space stations and generation ships under construction. When they detected the dark matter storm approaching their system, they had a choice. They could fight the impossible and die, or they could save what they could and flee to the stars. Jiwoo stared at the holographic Earth as it was consumed by cosmic forces beyond imagination. They evacuated their entire planet. Not everyone, Arya said quietly. Many chose to stay, to die with the world that gave them birth. But millions escaped in ships like this one, carrying their culture, their knowledge, their hope for the future. The images showed dozens of generation ships scattering across the galaxy, each heading toward distant stars where humans might build new homes. They didn't come as conquerors, Arya continued. They came as refugees, as survivors. And as they traveled, they discovered something wonderful and terrible. New images appeared, showing human ships detecting asteroid fields heading toward inhabited worlds, deflecting them with careful precision. They watched humans divert dangerous radiation bursts away from planets where primitive species were just beginning to develop technology. Your ancestors became guardians, Arya said. For 800 years, they protected developing civilizations from cosmic disasters, guided them past dangers they couldn't even see, helped them reach the stars safely, all while staying hidden, so the natural development of species wouldn't be disturbed. Sung-Ho studied the star charts with growing amazement. These worlds, some of them are founding members of the Concordat. They should have been destroyed by cosmic events decades before they achieved spaceflight. Someone prevented it, Arya confirmed. Your human ancestors gave their lives to ensure the galaxy's children could grow up safely. The truth hit them like a physical blow. Everything they had been taught about galactic history was wrong. Humanity hadn't been primitive destroyers. They had been protectors, guardians who had died in secret to keep other species safe. What happened to them? Taman asked, though part of him already feared the answer. Arya's expression grew darker. That, Commander, is where the story becomes tragic. Arya's holographic form flickered as she accessed deeper files in her memory banks. The chamber around them filled with new images, star charts showing human ships moving silently through space, always watching, always protecting. For 8 centuries, your ancestors worked in secret. Arya began. They saved countless worlds from disasters that would have ended civilization before it could begin, but they were not completely invisible. The images changed to show human vessels making careful contact with other species, never revealing themselves fully, but sharing crucial information about cosmic threats, teaching basic safety protocols, passing along knowledge that would help young civilizations survive their first steps into space. They were so careful, Navigator Jiwoo whispered, watching humans help an alien species detect dangerous solar flares. They tried not to interfere, just to keep everyone safe. Your ancestors understood something important, Arya explained. Every species must find its own path to the stars. But there's no honor in letting children die from dangers they cannot see or understand. Engineer Sungho studied the data streams flowing past them. These intervention records, the mathematics, are incredible. They calculated the exact moment to act late enough that each species would learn and grow from the experience, early enough to prevent total disaster. But as they watched more files, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Around 700 years into humanity's guardianship, the records started showing gaps. Ships that reported in regularly suddenly went silent. Colonies that had thrived for generations stopped sending messages. At first, we thought it was natural, Arya said, her voice growing sad. Space is dangerous, and humanity was spread thin across the galaxy. We assumed the silence meant ships had been lost to accidents, colonies had failed for normal reasons. Communications officer Yujin, who had been quietly analyzing the data, looked up with alarm. Arya, these aren't accident patterns. The ships that went silent, ... They all disappeared in a specific region of space, and the timing is too regular to be coincidence. Arya nodded grimly. You are correct. It took us nearly 50 years to realize the truth. Humanity wasn't dying from accidents or natural causes. Someone was hunting us. The chamber filled with new images that made the boarding party step backward in horror. They saw human colonies burning, generation ships torn apart by weapons fire, rescue vessels destroyed before they could even send distress signals. Who? Taman demanded. Who would do this? A species you know well, Arya replied. The Zephyrians. The name hit the crew like a physical blow. The Zephyrians were one of the founding members of the Galactic Concordat, known throughout the galaxy as great peacekeepers and protectors. Their homeworld was considered a shining example of civilization and wisdom. That's impossible, Biora protested. The Zephyrians are peaceful. They've never fought a war in recorded history. Recorded history, Arya repeated, the key words. Let me show you what they chose not to record. The holographic display showed Zephyrian scout ships discovering evidence of human intervention around their homeworld. Ancient sensor logs revealed how humans had quietly diverted 3 separate asteroid strikes that would have ended Zephyrian civilization before it could begin. Instead of gratitude, they felt diminished, Arya explained. How could they claim to be a great spacefaring civilization if another species had been protecting them all along? How could they take pride in their achievements if those achievements had only been possible because humans died to keep them safe? Yujin studied the intercepted Zephyrian communications with growing disgust. They called humans cosmic parasites and shadow manipulators. They convinced themselves that human protection was actually some kind of control system. The records showed how Zephyrian leaders had made a cold calculation. Humans were scattered, peaceful, and dedicated to remaining hidden. They would be easy to eliminate, and once they were gone, the Zephyrians could take credit for all the protective work humans had been doing. It was systematic, Arya continued, showing tactical analyses of the genocide. They identified human settlements through careful observation, then attacked without warning. They hunted down generation ships, destroyed research stations, eliminated any trace that humanity had ever existed. Sungho felt sick as he watched the data. They didn't just kill humans, they stole their work, their sacrifice, their entire legacy. Within 2 centuries, the Zephyrians had eliminated 95% of humanity, Arya confirmed. They then began taking credit for preventing cosmic disasters, positioning themselves as the galaxy's natural protectors. When other species achieved spaceflight and needed guidance, it was Zephyrian wisdom that kept them safe. The boarding party stood in stunned silence, processing the magnitude of the lie they had lived their entire lives. The Zephyrians hadn't just committed genocide, they had built their entire civilization's reputation on the stolen valor of their victims. The Concordat was founded on this lie, Taman said quietly. The Zephyrians became the respected elder species, the wise peacekeepers who had transcended warfare, because they had murdered the people who actually deserved that reputation. And they made sure to spread the story of humanity's self-destruction. Ji Woo added, a convenient explanation for why humans no longer existed, and a warning to other species about the dangers of violence. Arya's expression grew darker still. The genocide was not complete, Commander. Some humans survived, hidden in the deepest reaches of space. But their fate, that is a story for another day. First, you must understand why the truth matters now. New alarms began flashing across the chamber's displays. Eugen translated the automated alerts with growing alarm. Stellar instabilities. In the Concordat core systems, gravitational anomalies spreading along major trade routes, and these readings from subspace. Something is very wrong. The galaxy is in danger again, Arya said simply, and the species that murdered its guardians are about to learn why they were needed. Arya's holographic form gestured toward a new set of star charts that appeared in the air around them. The survivors I mentioned are not just scattered refugees, hiding in empty space. They are something far more important and far more dangerous to those who destroyed them. The coordinates she displayed pointed to a region of space that official Concordat maps marked as sterile zone, empty space with no resources, no life, nothing worth exploring. It was the kind of place most spacers avoided because it was boring and useless. 47,000 ships, Arya said simply. 7 million human souls, waiting in induced sleep for the galaxy to need them again. The numbers were staggering. Ji Woo did quick calculations in her head. That's more people than live on most Concordat worlds. How could they hide? An entire civilization, very carefully, and with a great deal of sacrifice, Arya replied. When it became clear that the Zephyrians would not stop until every human was dead, the surviving colony leaders made a desperate choice. They could keep running, keep hiding, and eventually be hunted down, one by one, or they could disappear completely and wait. The Starseeker followed Arya's coordinates deeper into supposedly empty space. What they found, there defied belief. The asteroid field looked natural from a distance, but as they got closer, Sung Ho's instruments revealed the truth. Commander, these asteroids, they're not real. The outer shells are natural rock, but inside, he paused, rechecking his readings. Inside they're hollow, and there are thousands of them. Taemin ordered the ship to move carefully through the field. Hidden passages opened in the artificial asteroids, revealing docking bays and corridors carved from living rock. The construction must have taken centuries. With entire generations of humans working to create this hidden refuge, at the center of the field, they found the command ship, a vessel even larger than the Remembrance, its hull disguised to look like just another space rock. As they docked, Arya's signal grew stronger, connecting with systems that had been dormant for over 1,000 years. Welcome to the sanctuary, Arya said as the boarding party entered the massive ship. The last free city of humanity. The corridors they walked through were different from the Remembrance. Where that ship had felt like a museum, this place felt like a sleeping giant. Everything was maintained perfectly, ready to spring back to life at a moment's notice. Emergency lighting followed their progress, and they could hear the quiet hum of life support systems keeping millions of people alive in their long sleep. Why did they go to sleep? Biora asked. Why not keep fighting, or find a new home somewhere far away? Arya led them to a vast observation chamber where they could see row upon row of hibernation pods stretching into the distance. Each pod held a human in perfect preservation, their bodies maintained by technology that was far advanced beyond anything that Concordat possessed, because they knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't, Arya explained. The Concordat's expansion across the stars would eventually cause the very disasters that humans had spent centuries preventing. She showed them projections of the galaxy's future that human scientists had calculated. Massive stellar engineering projects, uncontrolled expansion, the exploitation of cosmic forces without understanding their consequences. It was a recipe for a disaster on a galactic scale. The humans could see it coming, Eugen realized, studying the mathematical models. Their computer projections showed that within 1,000 years, Concordat technology would destabilize entire star systems. Your ancestors were not just guardians of the present, Arya confirmed. They were planners for the future. They knew that someday, the galaxy would need its protectors again. So they chose to sleep through the dark times and wait for that moment. If summoned by her words, emergency alerts began flashing throughout the command ship. Ancient monitoring systems, scattered across the galaxy, were sending urgent signals. The very disasters that humans had predicted were finally beginning to happen. Nuno translated the automated reports with growing fear. Stellar collapse. In the Altarian home system, subspace tears along the major trade routes. Gravitational waves from the Concordat's core worlds that don't match any natural phenomenon. The galaxy is tearing itself apart, Taemin whispered, just like the humans predicted. Through the observation windows, they could see changes beginning throughout the hidden fleet. Ships that had been dark for centuries were starting to show lights. Emergency revival protocols were activating as the monitoring systems detected the approaching crisis. "They're waking up," Biora breathed, watching thousands of vessels come back to life simultaneously. The hibernation pods in the chamber around them began to cycle, their occupants stirring from their thousand-year sleep. These weren't the desperate refugees who had fled Earth so long ago. These were the descendants of survivors, people who had been born knowing they might someday need to save a galaxy that had tried to destroy them. "The question now," Arya said quietly, "is whether the Concordat will accept help from the species they tried to erase, or whether pride will lead them to destruction." As the first humans began to emerge from their long sleep, stretching muscles that hadn't moved in centuries, Taman realized that everything was about to change. The galaxy had forgotten its guardians. But the guardians had never forgotten their duty. The stars themselves seemed to brighten as the human fleet awakened, as if the cosmos recognized the return of its protectors. The emergency broadcast from Commander Taman's crew reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. The truth about humanity's survival and the Zephyrian genocide spread like wildfire through communication networks that the Concordat could not control fast enough. On the Altarian homeworld, crowds gathered in public squares to watch the recordings. From the remembrance on distant mining colonies, workers stopped their machines to listen to Arya's testimony. Even on the proudest Concordat worlds, citizens demanded answers from leaders who had built their civilization on lies. The response was immediate and explosive. Half the Concordat species called for justice, for recognition of the genocide, for punishment of those responsible. The other half, led by the Zephyrians, insisted that the past should stay buried. "These humans are dangerous," declared Zephyrian Ambassador Krelthak, before an emergency session of the Concordat Council. "Look at their hidden fleets, their advanced technology. They've been watching us for centuries, planning how long before they decide we're the threat that needs to be eliminated." But the galaxy's children were no longer listening to words. As space-time distortions spread across Concordat territory, as stars began flickering out of sequence, as entire systems faced collapse, it became clear that someone needed to act quickly. Captain Hychin of the human vessel New Dawn was among the first to wake from the long sleep. Her ship emerged from its asteroid disguise and broadcast on all frequencies, her words reaching every inhabited world in the galaxy. "We didn't wake up to fight old wars or seek revenge," she said, her voice steady and calm despite everything her people had suffered. "We woke up because you're in danger. The same cosmic forces that our ancestors died to control are loose again. Without immediate action, your core systems will collapse within 10 years. The proof was undeniable. Human monitoring stations, hidden throughout the galaxy for centuries, provided data that Concordat science could barely understand. The stellar engineering projects that had brought prosperity to billions were creating cascade failures in the fabric of space itself. Working alongside the Concordat species who chose truth over comfortable lies, the Altarians, the Quiche, and others who valued survival over pride, humanity began the delicate work of cosmic repair. Their ships carried technology that seemed almost magical to those who watched. Gravitational stabilizers that could calm a raging star. Subspace weavers that repaired tears in reality itself. Stellar resonance harmonizers that taught entire solar systems to work together instead of fighting each other. Engineer Deho worked 12-hour shifts alongside Altarian scientists, his team showing them how to modify their stellar engineering to work with natural forces instead of against them. The Altarians were amazed by human techniques that had been developed through millennia of careful observation. "You don't control the stars," Deho explained to his alien colleagues. "You partner with them. Every star is alive in its own way. If you listen carefully, it will tell you what it needs." Medical Officer Sujin shared knowledge that human researchers had gathered during their long guardianship techniques for healing wounds in space-time that conventional science said were impossible to repair. Her methods seemed simple, but they worked when nothing else could. The most remarkable thing was how the cosmos itself responded to human presence. Where human ships worked, gravitational fields aligned naturally. Solar flares calmed without forced intervention. It was as if the universe recognized old friends returning home. "We learned to listen," Captain Hyjin explained to reporters from across the galaxy. "Your ancestors saw space as something to be conquered, controlled, used for profit. Our ancestors learned that true civilization means taking responsibility for forces bigger than any single world or species." The Zephyrians and their allies fought against the changes, but they were no match for a galaxy that had seen the truth. Emergency councils voted to dissolve the old Concordat and replace it with something new, the Galactic Stewardship Council. Based on humanity's philosophy of protection rather than exploitation, some Zephyrian extremists tried to attack human vessels, but their weapons had no effect. Human defensive technology had advanced far beyond anything the Concordat possessed, developed during centuries of hiding from genocidal hunters. More importantly, other species stepped in to protect the humans who were saving them. Out, ships formed protective escorts around human vessels. Kishari colonies opened their doors to human refugees, who were finally coming home from their long exile. Years passed as the work continued. The last of the space-time wounds healed under careful human guidance. Stellar engineering projects resumed, but now they followed protocols that worked with the galaxy's natural rhythms instead of fighting them. Navigator Biora, now serving aboard the restored Remembrance as it functioned as headquarters for the Stewardship Council, stood on the observation deck watching human and alien crews work together. Did we save them, or did they save us? She asked Taemin, who had become one of the first alien officers to serve in the integrated fleet. Tae-Min smiled, his mixed heritage no longer a source of confusion but of quiet pride. Maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the point is that we're all here, working together to keep the galaxy safe. In the depths of space, monitoring stations kept their eternal watch. Human designs improved with Concordat technology. Staffed by crews from a dozen different worlds, the galaxy finally had protectors who understood that strength came not from conquest, but from the patient work of making sure life could flourish among the stars. The universe remembered its guardians, and they had come home at last.